Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and in studio with me today is a phenomenal that I had the pleasure of making my acquaintance with recently. She is a familiar face to some of you because you probably have seen her perhaps on Sunday Best. She's a mom, an amazing singer, but most importantly, she's a woman of God, and she's taking time out of her very busy schedule to hang out with us for a little while to share a little bit of her journey with the hopes of inspiring and encouraging and uplifting others, especially as it pertains to dealing with the overcoming of adversities and challenges in our lives. So it is my privilege, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce to you our special guest this evening, Miss Martha Buries. Martha, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So before we get into our segments for this evening, I do want to give you an opportunity to give the audience a little bit of introduction about yourself, who you are, where you're from, what you do. Kind of give them a taste of who is Martha Buries.
Okay, well, my name is Martha Buries. I am originally from Chicago, Illinois. My mother moved us to Texas when I was around 13 or 14 years old. And I grew up in the Richardson, Dallas area. So that's basically where I grew up at. After that, I moved to the Houston area in 2006. I am a mother of two. I have a daughter and I have a son. They are grown, 26 and 24. They are my life, my hope, my strength, my everything. They are who I am today. So, or they are they're why I am the person I am today. So I'll put it like that. I am a songstress. I do sing. I've been on a couple of shows on Sunday Best, the season 3, and also season 8, the All Star season. Um, I work in the oil and gas industry. My trade is an accountant, so I work in finance, accounting. So that's just a little bit about me.
All right, all right. That's phenomenal, and again, it's so funny. Like we talked about before the show started. You know, you refer to yourself as a very shy and quiet person, so it's so interesting to hear you so soft spoken, but then having heard you sing in person and this
Mm,
this big boisterous voice, it's
yeah.
just so interesting to see both dynamics of it. And of course, we got to give shout out to the fact that you are originally from Chicago. I am as well. So,
Okay.
so we got some
Okay.
Chicago flavor in the show. We representing
Yeah.
that. Okay, so
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
there we
I
go.
am
That's
quiet,
awesome.
but I can raise my voice when when I need to. I need to. I just sit in the back and I'm very observant. So yeah.
Hey,
I will talk
that's
as long as there's something to talk. 'Cause that's why I'm here today. So yeah.
Hey, there we go. There we
Yeah.
go. Well, we're not gonna keep the audience anticipating any longer. We're gonna go ahead and jump into our conversation this evening. So, Martha, as I tell all my guests that comes on, I'm a big believer that when we share our stories, when we share that journey of our lives, it's really important that we take a few moments to reflect back to the beginnings of it all, where it all starts, and because a lot of times what we figure out, and we don't usually know then, but as life goes forward and we get a little bit older, we get a little bit more experience, we begin to connect the dots, we begin to make some having some light bulb moments, if you will, where okay, this is why this particular situation happened, or this is why I had to encounter this particular person in that particular point in time. It all begins to add up, but those beginnings are so critical because in many ways they formulate what ultimately leads up to the whole purpose of our lives, why we are who we are, and what is it exactly that God is destined for us to do. And so, with that said, I want to take a few minutes, if you would, to ask if you share with us, kind of think back to those early days, the childhood days, if you will, and share with us what was it like for you growing up, fond memories that you have about growing up, as well as if there's any challenges that you care to share, you can do that as well. Kind of give us that foundational basis of where your story begins.
Okay. Well, I am number 7 of 7 children. I have 5 sisters and one brother. So I'm the baby of 7. So I'm used to being in a big household. So a lot of family. Thankful for my sisters and my brother because we really didn't have a lot of friends, but so we had to befriend each other. My parents were a whole lot older than myself. My mother had me when she was 43. My dad was 63. So I would go to school and they would think they were my grandparents, but they they were my parents. So um, just kind of grew up very, very old school. My father was a pastor, mother first lady, church 7 days a week, 8 days a week, however you want to say it. Always church, church this, church that. So just very family oriented. While we were in Chicago, my dad's family was most of the family that we were involved with when we were little. But there were always memories growing up in the home. So my sisters and my brothers are older than me, so I always had like multiple mothers. Um, so there was no getting away from that. But I remember talent shows on the steps. In Chicago there are basements. Going in the
Hmm.
basement. Wait until mom and daddy leave to play our R&B music. So because that was just a no-no. So I remember all those types of things. The sneaky things, the funny things. Those are the memories that have carried me on throughout life. Um, but just always remembering that you are who you are, even though there are a lot of people. You have to not so much make yourself stand out, but remember that you are an individual. So, because sometimes you can get lost when there's a lot of people around. You can lose yourself and lose who you are. Um, I thank my mother for who she was because she made sure that although there were a lot of us, she made sure that each and every one of us were loved. So she not only raised us, but she raised her grandkids as well. So I have nieces that are 9 months younger than me.
Mm.
So that just to tell you how, the age difference in some of my siblings. Um, yeah, so growing up was really, really interesting in our family. But there was always singing, there was always, just love. There was, sometimes hurt, sometimes tears, but most of all, you know, I knew that, my family was about love when I was smaller. Yes.
That's a beautiful thing to hear. A big loving family. I mean, I'm a single child, only child. So you know, sometimes that's a good thing, and then sometimes you kind of envy that when you look at those kids that had the big family, all the brothers and sisters, and it just
Mhm.
and then to have a family like you said, like as you described, where it clearly was close knit. Yes, a lot of church, very church heavy, but that's not a bad thing. In the sense of
Mhm.
embedding God as the foundational basis of your lives. It's always wonderful to hear stories like that, and just the connectivity of the family and the closeness and supportive parents and the like. And I can identify, when you talk about having older parents. I mean, I became a parent later in life, and of course it
Mhm.
doesn't help, even though I'm not a quote unquote old man, it doesn't help that I have the color of my hair, because there have been many times I've been at school with my daughter and they're like, "Is that your grandpa?" you know It was like, no, I'm not quite grandpa age just yet.
Right.
But it's, kids see what they see, and they make that
Mhm. Mhm.
assumption. So I could totally relate to that. So definitely
Mhm.
appreciate you sharing with us, what kind of giving us that glimpse of those early years. One thing that I am curious to know about those early years for you is obviously with with your love for singing. I'm curious to know, when did that element of your life really become a thing for you, to where you were like, yeah, this is something that I'm really into and I want to pursue a little bit further, making it my own.
Well, I can tell you stories that my mother and my siblings will share with me. I've not always been, kids are just fearless, so just growing up, I can remember my sisters had a group. And so my father would take them around, Chicago when he would have to preach and they would sing, before he rendered his message. So I would always see them up there singing, and it was just like, I need to be up there, So I would force my way up there, and get told to come back and sit down, and then I really can't say what happened, but before I knew it, I was up there and I was still in the show. I had no
Mm.
shame, and people were, ready to hear, the Buries sisters sing because they had this little bitty one, they're singing. And, I soon grew out of that boldness, but yeah, that's how that happened. My mother sang, a phenomenal singer. My father was a phenomenal singer. He sang in a quartet. He was a soprano. So yeah,
Okay.
they were very, very talented. My sister played, the piano back in the day. I can remember those things. but just a very talented, family. It was one of those things like when I watch TV now and I see some of the sitcoms and I see how the families get together and they'll just bust out in song and it's in
Mm-hmm.
harmony. That was my family. That was us. Like I said, we weren't allowed to have friends and go outside and play, a whole lot like that. So we had to make up things. And one of those things was just, we would have we would play TV, it would be
Mm-hmm.
singing, we had actors, we had everything going on, in that basement, that basement and on those stairs. So that's how that came about. My sisters had a group and I was just determined to be in that group. So
Wow. That is
yeah.
that's a beautiful story. I mean, and I'm just envisioning it, especially and I know, depending upon who the listener is, you may not understand the significance of what that basement scene looks like because as you shared, in
Hmm.
Chicago, that's
Yeah.
not an unusual thing to have basements in your homes, whereas of course here in
Yeah.
Texas, you don't really see that unless you have a special customized situation. That's not a
Hmm.
thing, and basements were oftentimes, as you said, the center of whether it was playtime things like with big families, just doing stuff in the basement, having contests or doing whatever. Or of course, as you get older, basements were party setups, and that kind of thing.
Right.
So
Hmm.
the basement was oftentimes your entertainment space, for whatever
Hmm.
the reason was for that household. So you paint a really cool picture. It just makes me think about being over different people's houses who had the basements and
Hmm.
etc. and what that
Hmm.
life was and that experience was like in being in that moment. And again, it was just a camaraderie. It was just an environment of love and and fellowship, and just in a unique way that unfortunately you don't see a lot of anymore these days like you used to
Hmm.
back then. I can even envision, and I'm sure you probably would, you know, uh, attest to that. When you talk about the singing being a normal thing and kind of making that comparison to sitcoms, I could probably see you all in there, on a Sunday, having getting Sunday dinner ready, and somebody's breaking out in the song while they're cooking in the kitchen or whatever, or you're
Hmm.
cleaning house or doing whatever. It was just music obviously had a great influence in your life as well as of course the godly presence. So that's always beautiful to hear those type of stories. So thank you for sharing that. Um,
No problem.
so Martha, as you know, of course, you had a wonderful childhood, and you venture off into adulthood, and as we get older, so the experiences come our way, and in the midst of those experiences come trials, come a series of storms, and every now and then, even in the midst of those storms, we get hit every once in a while. Every now and then there's one that comes our way that hits a little different, that we find ourselves facing a moment of adversity, that this is something that we start to have maybe some doubt, some questions as to how am I going to get through this, how I'm going to overcome this. Even somebody like yourself who grew up in a home that was very God centered, a lot of times people have this misconception that believers don't go through things. Well, yeah, yeah, we do. And sometimes even for a believer, sometimes you're faced with challenging moments that seem insurmountable, seem like they're impossible to overcome. And so with that said, if you would share with us about a moment in time in your life where you faced that type of situation, where you didn't see a way out, that you didn't this wasn't something that you had the easy response, the easy answer to. You didn't know how you were going to overcome it or get through it. Obviously you're here today, so we can trust that God made a way, but maybe back then you weren't quite sure what that way was going to look like. So if you would kind of walk us through what this story is going to be for you that you share, and kind of let us know, what was the turning point when you began to see some light at the end of the tunnel and coming up out of that situation.
Sure. If I could step back just for a moment, with me being the younger child, there were things that, happened in the household that I did not have to experience as my older sisters and brothers had to experience. So I don't want to sit here and make it seem like it was just perfect. And we all know that there's no perfect anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I thank my mother for being the woman that she was because all I saw was perfect.
Mm.
All I saw was perfect. So it wasn't until I was of age and grown to know that things weren't as perfect as I saw them. So I said that to say, with me growing up, I always thought, that things were just supposed to be sweet, and just wonderful. And, I didn't have to hurt. I'd never been hurt before, I can't even remember getting a whooping. I think I got popped one time, you know, not to say I was a perfect child, but I didn't want to hurt, you know. Hurt was just not in my vocabulary. I didn't want to feel hurt. I didn't want to know what it took to feel hurt. I didn't want to know any of that. And growing up, I didn't see any of that. So um, as I began to get older, just going through high school, just dealing with, other teenagers and, trying to have friendships and experiencing, people not liking you for, whatever reason, that's when hurt began to trickle in to my life. And I still didn't understand it because it was something that I never had to experience. So I'll skip from there to just getting older. I had my daughter at 23. I was pregnant with her at 22. And what what scared me about becoming a mother was not being the type of mother that I had.
Mm.
So we always know and think that, we can never amount to what our mother is or our father is or that type of person or someone that we look up to. We can never be as great as they are. So that was always a fear of mine when I was carrying my daughter. Um, and to know, if I would be good enough for her or if I would be good enough to as good as my mother was with what she did, because all I saw her do was take care of people, whether it was her own, her grandkids, or just people out on the streets, animals, anything. We were always bringing home stray dogs, so and that took a turn and a meaning in my life later on too. So um, I just saw that, so I was very afraid to become a mother. I once upon a time said I didn't want to have kids because I saw the how hard, not so much how hard it was, but it was just I never saw my mother doing anything but take care of people, and I did not want to become that person. I love my daughter to death. She's the best thing that has ever happened to me, um, and she is the reason I am who I am today, as well as my son. But to just change from being just a single person being able to do whatever you want to do and to have to now become somebody's the light, as I see my mother as my light. I couldn't find that, so I was in darkness. I couldn't understand how that was going to happen, and for it to fall into when she came, of course, that was the greatest thing. You've had a child, so those moments, the greatest thing, even with being that young, but still not knowing, how am I going to do this and how am I going to do this, and then to have to do it alone, you know, um, that was probably the most hurtful thing. My first time really, really experiencing hurt to the point to where I just couldn't believe that people could hurt anybody like that, So I was always told when you make something, you take care of it. I don't care if it's a sandwich, you're gonna eat it. So, make something, you take care of it. So um, that was one of probably the most traumatic things, if not the most traumatic thing, in my life, is becoming a single parent. Um, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. It's not the worst thing in life, but it surely is not the best thing in life. I think, with the type of childhood that I had, I just felt like it would always be, you know, I've seen it on TV. That's the way it's supposed to go. So that's the way it's supposed to go in my life. And I came to learn as I got older that what you see is not always what you get. So you see those depictions of love. You see the depictions of togetherness. You see the depictions of I can do this, and it can be done. And you hear the sermons, just hold to God's unchanging hands. Well, how do you hold to God's unchanging hands when you can't buy diapers, you know,
Mm.
you can't buy milk, and then you're asking this person to do these things and they just simply don't do them to help you, you know. Um, So things like that will turn they'll either turn you to greater or they'll turn you to worse. Luckily, in my case, I became what I needed to become to take care of what I needed to take care of. My mother was there for me, and thank God she was because, I had always been around other kids, my nieces and nephews, but I just didn't know what it was going to take to be around something that, you made yourself. I say it was traumatic because um, without going into a lot of detail, there are things that a person has to go through when they're dealing with something like that of being a single parent. If you've never had to be one, thank God. But if you have had to go through that, then you know exactly what I'm saying and what I'm talking about. But it's just something that, I have to say that it was God's plan for my life, to have to go through that and to see me out of it, on the upside of things and not the downside of things. There's a lot of things that could have transpired with me being a single mother, but God didn't. He didn't make it that bad for me. I'll say that there was some bad days. There were some really, really bad things and some bad days, but it wasn't bad enough to where I'm not here right now. So um, I would say, as far as trauma, I can say that's one of the most traumatic things that I've had to deal with, and have to, not so much to go through it once, but to go through it twice,
Mm.
with unfortunately, the same person. But, I'm on the upside of that. And, you know, I look back at things now and I thank God that I made it through those things. But, when people, I've heard people say, they're always saying they were a single mother, they were this or that, but, the child had a father, yeah, but there's a difference when you have someone and it wasn't a money thing. For me, it was more so
Mhm.
the being there, because that's the most important thing to me. I remember my parents being there, and I hope this interview just makes a full circle. I remember, my parents being there when I was in talent shows and, showing my gift that they were responsible for, and also, they're them being mimicked as being my grandparents, but they were there. They were there. Anything that happened with their children, they were there by any means necessary. So to not have that, seeing that, and to think that that's the way it's supposed to be, and to not have that, it can be a little, heartbreaking, a lot of heartbreaking, so, um,
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, of course, first off, thank you for your transparency and your vulnerability. You know, the single mom experience is different for everyone. But by no means is it has it been traditionally known as being something that is you know an exciting venture to be on. I mean, and I love the fact in the sharing of your story that while you did mention, of course, the financial challenges that come along with it, because I think a lot of times, the assumption is that in that single mom moment, that's all that's the only challenge is, I don't have that financial support. But it's a lot deeper than that, and you took it there, which I think is very critical. Is about the
hmm
presence of that other parent, in this case, the father, being in that child's life, and how you feel as a parent when you don't have that fatherly presence, because you're around your children all the time, and whether they say it, verbally, or it's their nonverbal cues, you can sense, you can feel when they're missing that absence of that parent's presence, and how that might make them feel in that
hmm
moment. And in some instances, a child, depending upon that child, they might hold those feelings in for a long time, and it's tearing them up inside. I mean, having grown up in a single parent household myself, and my father did not contribute financially, even though I knew who my father was, and I had a chance to interact with him from time to time. But the thing, as you stated, the thing that I missed most as the child in that situation was the lack of presence. When
yeah,
I think back to, all the different, whether it was an award ceremony, or whether it was a particular, game, or whether there was a particular other activity of significance to me or to my mom, and then to not have that other parent's presence there, it makes you feel some kind of way. And there ultimately comes a point where, in that child, you can reach that breaking point where you have to let it out, like what you've been feeling. And I don't know if
hmm
you had that same experience with your children, but you
hmm
know it's a painful thing. So to my listeners, I say that to say, for anybody that might be tuning into this episode, if you are not actively present, in that child's life, despite the fact that you and in this case, you know, if mom and dad have split apart, it didn't work out. Okay, these things happen, but don't
Hmm.
penalize the child in the process, whether that be penalizing them in a financial regard, or penalizing them in that presence, because the presence matters. That presence is so significant, and even for the two people who have split apart, you know, you might have been saying to yourself, I'm not saying that we need to get back together, but at least be
Hmm.
present for me as parents. You know, can
Hmm.
we, if we don't agree on nothing else, can we agree as parents that for the sake of our children, you know, as you said,
Hmm.
your mother referred to them. If you know you made them, you got to take care of it. You know, you got to
Hmm.
take care of them. You know, can we at least agree upon that and take care of them and not let our own individual differences impede that, because it not only is hurtful to one another, you know, particularly the parent who's left hanging, but then again, it plays a role in the lives of those children. Again, whether they openly express it or not, whether they're suffering in silence or not, and so it's a big deal. You know, and so I'm glad again that you bring that up, because it's such an important message to relay. And you know, the presence is everything. That physical presence, that concern. Just act like you show me that you give a care, that you
Yeah.
that I matter to
Yeah.
you. That I'm just
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
just something that you did one day, and I'm just a fond memory in the back of your mind, forgotten about, kicked to the curb or whatever. I mean, nobody wants to feel that.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I don't think people think about the strain that it puts on that single parent, and there are a lot of single men out there that are
Hmm.
single parents as well, so I would say, I won't say single mother, I'll say single parent. It's a strain because how do you explain something that you don't understand to your child?
Yeah.
We're supposed to give them everything. We're supposed to have all the answers. We're supposed to heal them, scrape cuts, burns, anything, we're supposed to take care of that, mommy, daddy, we're supposed to take care of that. But how do you explain that to your child, especially when they come to you about it, and you don't have answers. You don't have answers. And I want to also say, this is not a knock against my situation, or anything like that, because, people are young. And sometimes when you're young, you just don't know any better. But my thing is, when you become of age and you do know better, it's not too late.
Hmm.
It's not too late. I can understand when you're 20, 25, not doing anything, but 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, and above, it's still not too late. Just, you still, as long as there's breath in each one of your, you all's bodies, the parent and the child, the absentee parent and the child, you still can at least try. It may not be welcome, but, don't leave this earth without trying. That's what I would say. Just don't leave this earth without trying. We've all grown up, we've all forgotten, and, it is what it is. Like I said, I came up on the upside of things, but I think it's very important for that person to remember, you're not always you're not always going to be young. You're going to get old. And most old people, they want their children around. They want their people around. Those things. You should be able to impart some type of wisdom at that point. As acknowledging your mistake, but still, just don't
Hmm.
leave this earth, without trying.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and I'm glad you brought that point up. Just letting that absentee parent know, again, that hey, yeah, I might have messed up, whether it was due to age, immaturity, combination of the two, whatever. But as you said, it's never too late to
Hmm.
recover, and yeah, there is a possibility, depending upon how long you drug that thing out, and you know, and maybe the mistreatment that took place in between time, the abandonment feeling,
Hmm.
that feelings that have arisen in the process. Yeah, you might genuinely and authentically come back apologizing and saying, you know, I made a terrible mistake and all those good things, and it may not be received. It may you may get the cold shoulder, but at least
Hmm.
you've made the effort to try to bring some apologetic spirit to the moment, that you opened up and in an honest and open way said, hey, I was wrong. It was unfair to you. I mean, that's all that can be expected, that you at least try it. But I think you'd be surprised more times than not for that absentee parent who has been away for an extended period of time. I think you'd be surprised more times than not that it usually will turn out more positive than it would negative, even if it
Mhm.
takes a little time for things to
Mhm.
kind of to warm up again, if you will, or perhaps even warming up for the first time, depending upon how long you've been
Mhm.
apart. But so it's worth the effort. It's worth that, that commitment to the process. So again, to those who may be tuning in and are in that situation, or if you know somebody that's in that situation and you're tuning into this, please be of encouragement to them, be of support to them, to let them know, hey, it's not too late. And if need be, maybe accompany them as they try to have that conversation, to try to bring forth that coming together, that mending, that healing, because that's where the healing comes in, is actually in the, and we didn't say the word, but we're talking about forgiveness here. We want to
Mhm.
promote the forgiveness. Now, and keep in
Mhm.
mind, forgiving doesn't mean that you excuse the behavior, that you justify what took place. If it was wrong, if it was low down, if it was out of pocket, it was all of those. It still is. But in order for to invoke that healing, and the healing more so for you than even for the other person, at some point I gotta
Mhm.
say, you know what, I didn't like what you did or what you failed to do, but I forgive you for that. Now you've instantaneously ignited that healing inside of you. You have the opportunity to be made whole again, to move forward from that. Because as long as you hold that resentment and that hate and that frustration inside of you, it's like the equivalent of carrying poison around in you, somehow thinking that you're hurting somebody else, when in fact all you're doing is making it hard on yourself, to the point to where it may even impact you in future relationships. You might meet that special someone who will do right by you and do right by your kids, but you can't even connect with them the right way because you're still
Mhm.
harboring those ill feelings from the past, and you're taking it out on the next person. Perhaps
Mhm.
missing out on an opportunity that could be the one that God was trying to set up for you, that's going to be the better situation. So keep those things in mind, as well. So definitely good points that you bring up, and again, acknowledging that it can happen to the single mom, and it can even happen to some single dads, because they both
Mhm.
exist, and under neither circumstance is it fair, especially if it didn't happen naturally, where a parent passed away or something like that, versus it
Right.
being just something where somebody is just saying, I'm out. I don't want no parts of this. That's not okay. So again, I thank you, for sharing that. One other thing I wanted to ask before we move forward, in your single parent, um, and I keep saying in the single parent experience that you went through raising your children, in that process, as difficult and as challenging as it was, what was that one thing that you would say that you learned about yourself, in that process, that was a good thing, that made you stronger, that made you a better person in just having to deal with that level of adversity?
Um, I would say that it made me forget about all of my insecurities. As people, we carry around insecurities, we carry around flaws, we carry around all these things. But when you have to set yourself aside to think about this little one that has, nothing to do, didn't ask to come here, and, they were like me, they come here in the world. And when I see kids, they're so fearless and they're just so, they think, everything is just good and all of that. When you have to look into the eyes of those children or that child, and with everything that's going around, your situation, you just have to set it aside. You have to set it aside and you have to move on. It's not to say let it go, because, we're human. We're not going to just let things go, like that. It's not to fight, not to say don't fight for child support. I did. And I'll be honest and say I did fight for child support. But when you can't get it, what do? You have to keep going. You have to keep going. You have to keep moving on. I was put in a situation to where I excused all arrears, and that was probably at the time it was the worst thing I felt like I'd ever done in my life. But it was absolutely the best thing I could have done in my life because it allowed me to move on. I had to set my insecurities aside, set myself aside, and think about what was in front of me. And in that time, it was a, you know, two children that were 2 years apart. So
Mm.
that was most important to me. I think it made me become more of a woman. And I would say also when my mother passed away in 2009, because although they did not have their father, you know, um, I would say on a daily basis, or, to be there as the father of the year or whomever, my mother was there.
Mm.
Again, the person that I saw raising my nieces and my nephews and her children as well, she was there for mine. And I refuse to be that type of parent to take my kids and set them on my mama, let granny raise them. She raised them, but she helped me raise them. She was the best father that they could have ever had, So I'll put it like that. And not never once, she never bashed, the absence. She never talked about it bad. She was just glad to have grandkids that she loved, and they loved her. Um, so it put me in a position to see things differently, to see, that I can't walk around with this grudge, in my heart, because as kids grow, they begin to feel those, rainbow feelings. They go away, they start to hurt, they start to ask questions, they become inquisitive, and they want to know what's going on. Well, mama, why? Well, mama this and mama that. You have to be able to explain to them, why. And a lot of things we keep from our kids until they get older, because they just won't really understand it anyway, and they're not going to pick a side anyway.
Mhm.
I will say this, they did have some opportunities to be with their family, their other side, but it was more so in the summers as they got older, to be with their other siblings and everything. And I thank God that they had that opportunity. Their other grandmother, was there for them, um, as they got older, and that was great. And as they became grown, I left it up to them, because now you can make your own decisions. You
Mhm.
can make your own decisions on what you want to do. But to stay focused on the question, it made me realize that I was strong. The insecurities that I did have, they went out of the window. I forgot about them. Became, obsolete. They didn't matter, anymore. And I think, just to even look at that, God does all things well. And so it made me look and, perceive it as, maybe you had to have this happen to you in order for you to let that go,
Mhm.
So um, I became strong. I had no choice. I became strong, and I did whatever I had to do, to appear strong. I wasn't always happy, but I let them see what my mother let me see, and that was just a good life as a kid.
Love that.
Being thankful for being a kid, being thankful for being a kid, my heart goes out to those children that have to, have the downside of things, to where they have to see and be abused and do all those things. But I just thank God that, I landed on the upside of things, and it wasn't a
Absolutely.
repetitive thing. It wasn't a repetitive thing. So I would say the biggest word out of it, or the biggest thing for me, is that I became strong.
That very well said. I mean, that's a beautiful beautiful sign of growth, spiritual growth, maturity in you. I love that, like I said, the kids did have an opportunity to experience a bit of the extended family on the other side, and then just like you said, even as they approached adulthood, that you clearly let them take the lead in making the decision how they wanted to proceed in terms of whether they want to build a relationship or not, because that's another challenge that we have a lot of times in those single parent scenarios, where sometimes you have the parent bashing, and or the I'm not going to
Mm-hmm.
let you see your kids and that kind of thing, and that's never good to
Mm-hmm.
do either. So I just love your whole approach to it all, even in the midst of the difficult and the challenging moment of it all. You stood strong, you stood resilient, and you served it. You placed a covering of protection over your kids, so that they didn't have to see, or you minimize them seeing or experiencing the ugly side, or the uncomfortable side, if you will, of the single parenthood life, and trying to, like you said, give them an upbringing that they didn't have to go through that they didn't have to worry about that. They could just enjoy just being kids and growing up and feeling the
Hmm.
love and and compassion that you shared and poured into them, as well as their grandmother and as well as other extended family members. So that's beautiful, and I love the way you approach that. And that's, again, to our listeners, she's dropping some gems here as to some effective ways to handle those type of situations, even if it gets chaotic, even if it gets crazy. There's ways to kind of smooth it out and make it at least an easier path to follow, even in the midst of the
Hmm.
difficulties of the moment. We're not downplaying the challenges and the difficulties and acting like they weren't there, but there's a proper approach. But it's all, and in my thoughts of it is, you were being led by God to do it this way. You were doing it in a manner that was decent and in order, and that's always a positive uh, outlook to take on the situation, which is why you made that upward swing. You were able to come up on the high end of it all because you took the high road of it all. You could have went left, you could have went road, you could have wild out on it, but you chose to take the other approach, and that benefited not only your children, but it benefited you. It made you a better person. It made you a better woman. So that's always a beautiful thing. So thank you again with your transparency and openness, and as you're sharing here, because this is blessing some people. So you've talked about some pretty heavy stuff so far, but as the storms of life, sometimes they're heavy, like what we've been talking about for a while now, and then sometimes it's just the daily annoyances of this lifing type of stuff that we deal with. But what I'm curious to know from you is, when you do find yourself facing adversity, regardless of what levels of intensity it might be or what have you, um, what is it, your routine, your regimen, if you will, that you like to do, that you like to follow, that kind of works best for you when you find yourself up against a situation? What do you like to do that's a healthy practice that just kind of helps you to navigate with a clear mind, a clear focus, and dealing with difficult times?
Just music. That's why I love music so much. And it's not so much me being an artist in that moment. It's just, finding something that identifies with the way that I'm feeling, helping me through that emotion at the time. Music is so healing. And it's definitely a gift from God, because whatever you're going through, if you want to feel happy, if you want to feel sad, you can turn to music, So I listen to music. I have certain playlists for certain things. If if I'm going through something and I don't understand it, I have a playlist for that. If I'm going through something and I don't want to deal with it, I have a playlist for that. It takes my mind off of things. And I grew up listening to, my parents only allow us to play gospel music, but I love many genres of music. I say if it has a good melody, I'll listen to it, and it could be a rock song. It could be country, it could be, anything, it could be R&B, it could be rap, but if it has a melody to it and it's speaking to my situation at the time, um, I'm going to listen to it. And most 9 times out of 10, it's going to navigate me into trying to you know, figure my situation out, instead of just acting when I first get into that situation. Um, if it's something that I'm nervous about, I'd say, whether it's for work or something like that, it's music again, but it's something that's going to calm me, calm my nerves. And that way I'm able to assess the situation and see what's going on. I'm able to be focused on, that the passage I'm supposed to be reading, or anything like that. It kind of settles me before. So it's the calm before the storm for me. So um, anything that's going on in my life, I turn to music. I turn to music, and most of the times it's our old 100 hymns. It's our old 100 hymns. So that's definitely what I do.
Love that. Love that approach. Because as you said, music just has that ability to just speak to all circumstances, all situations, and it's just, if nothing more, whether there's obviously songs that can give you answers to your prayers and to your situations, but sometimes you just need to, before you can even hear from God. If your mind is all over the place, if your emotions are all over the place, you need to have something that, like you said, that kind of settles you, that kind of calms you down, that kind of helps you to purge whatever it is that's inside of you, so that once that's clear, Now you can lock in and focus into, okay, okay, Lord, where you want me to go with this? What am I supposed to
Hmm.
glean from this experience? How am I supposed to navigate from here? So I think that that's very therapeutic. It's very helpful. It's very healing. Very soothing, as you mentioned, to take that approach. And that's not to say that there aren't other approaches that are effective as well. But anybody that's listening, if you don't have an approach right now, if you struggle trying to figure out what's a good thing to possibly turn to, this is definitely a solid option for you to consider, and something very easy for you to begin to compilate together. Like I said, get your playlist together, identify those particular songs. And if you don't know off the top of your head, we got the worldwide internet that can help you to plug in and find that song.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah,
definitely
absolutely.
something, definitely good
Yeah,
good things to tap into in situations like that with the music. So appreciate that. So
yeah, it's no problem.
absolutely. So Martha, when you think back on all your experiences of life, the good, the bad, and everything in between, and you're reflecting on the growth and all that goes along with it, if you had the opportunity to sit across the table from the younger Martha, when you think back to where you are today and where she was back then, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, or just taking into consideration the fact that somebody might be listening right now to our podcast, somebody that's having that single mom experience, or single dad experience, or maybe there's a child who grew up in that household who had that who experienced what it was like to have that absentee parent, and what that did to them, the trauma of that, the emotions of that. What would you say to those listeners, or again to younger Martha, that you believe would be of encouragement or of inspiring message to them as to how to process such things and begin to get on a path of healing, a path of forgiveness, a path of being able to overcome what that experience is like, whether you're the on the parent side of it, or whether you're on the child side of it? What would you say?
If I had to speak to my younger self, I would first let her know that, be thankful for your upbringing. Um, God is always going to handle it. It may not be in your favor, you know, but He's always going to handle it. Pray for protection, for peace, over your life, as you've been taught, because everybody didn't grow up in a church household, everybody did not. But as you navigate through life, I think it's important to find, a relationship with God. That's the only person that I know. I can't speak on the other higher powers that people talk about because I was taught God. God was drilled into me. And I know why, because some of the things I've had to handle, throughout life, you know, that's why God was drilled into, to us as children, because we were going to need Him at some point. I would tell her, you're always going to need Him. You're always going to need God. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. In the smallest situations, whatever you do in life, just, getting in your vehicle driving, you know, I tell my kids all the time, before you drive off in that car, say a prayer, because you don't know what's going to happen. You're always going to need Him. Implement Him in everything that you're doing in your life, whether it's a walk in your neighborhood, because there's so much calamity going on around these days. You just never know what you're going to fall into. But I would also tell her to be thankful for the trials, be thankful for the tribulations. It's not always going to be hard. Just believe, stay focused, set aside what's not important at the moment. Um, and, look at me now. That would be the biggest thing I would tell my younger person. Look at us now. Look at us now. There are going to be a lot of things, there would be warnings, that I would let her know. There will be a lot of things that are going to break you down. But look at us now.
Mm,
And for anybody that's out there that's, going through anything or going through something, we're living in a world now where we don't really know what's going to happen. But one thing you can know for sure, that God is going to handle it all. He's going to take care of it all. There's nothing in that Bible that I've read that has not come to pass, that has not sent me through, that has not, given me hope, that does not keep a smile on my face when I should be crying. There's nothing, that I've had to go through that has just kept me down. And it's because of the relationship that I would have with God. You don't have to have my relationship with Him, but have your own relationship with Him. It's so important. It's so important to implement Him. Without Him, we're nothing. We're absolutely nothing. And then when you get to a certain point, you'll be able to look. It may not be your younger self, but it may be yourself 2 years ago, and you'll say, "Look at us now."
Mhm.
So, yeah.
I love that. Love that. Very well said. Look at me now.
Hmm.
In spite of all that I've been through, all of the highs, all of the lows, look at me now. Um,
Hmm.
I wasn't. If you had written this out in the script, I wasn't supposed to make it. It was supposed to
Hmm.
go a completely different direction, but because of my relationship with God, because of my dependency on Him, because I rested in Him for guidance, for direction, for support. Um, I allowed Him to navigate my way, even in the midst of the chaos, even in the midst of the storms. Um, Look at me now. And
Hmm.
that message is so powerful, just those words, because to our listeners, hey, we all go through stuff, but
Hmm.
it's who are we connected to along the way, because that matters. And as Martha said, all she knew who to be connected with to was God. That was the relationship. And look at her now. Look at her now. She's been able to raise, despite the challenges of single parenthood, she was able to raise two beautiful children into adulthood, and they're living their lives and doing their thing. She's still standing. She's still strong. Her resiliency is at an all time high. Her courage is at an all time high. Those insecurities are that used to hinder her are a thing of the past. That doesn't mean again that the storms won't continue to come, but what happens is through that relationship with Christ, you learn how to navigate them better. Your response to them is different. You stop looking at them as
Hmm.
just strictly negative events. You start looking at them as opportunities to grow, to develop, to become better versions of yourselves. So, everything that she said are key points that you can easily embrace and apply right now. Especially if you're somebody that doesn't have a plan of action as to how to deal with difficult and challenging times. She's giving you a blueprint that can be immediately applied. But it begins with that relationship with God. You have to have that, and He, as you said, He has to be in every aspect, every element of what you do. Don't get behind that wheel without saying a prayer. Don't make that big decision without consulting with Him. Don't allow your life to be just directed by your own emotions and your own thoughts and your own ways, because that doesn't say that God hasn't equipped us to have some common sense and some knowledge, but He's the ultimate authority. He knows what's best. He knows all of the things that we can't see. He can see behind those layers. And if we trust in Him and we rely upon Him for that, He'll give us those cues to let us know, you don't want to do that. That's not where you want to go with that. Oh, absolutely, you want to go this direction. So you got to be open to that. You got to be willing to receive that insight, that guidance from Him, and He will never steer you wrong. So, and Martha, you are a testament. You are a living testament to that. So, appreciate you sharing that. So,
Sure, it's no problem.
absolutely. So, Martha, this has been phenomenal, with you sharing this evening, as you have. Your story is powerful, very relatable, very relevant. This is the real time stuff that happens to people all the time, and it's happening to people right now. And so, your transparency, your vulnerability is so much appreciated, and I'm so thankful that we had the opportunity to make this happen for you to be on the show and pour into us as you have, and as expected. Not only have I been blessed, but I know my listeners have been blessed, in your presence this evening, and pouring into us as you have. So again, I extend you the utmost thanks, for doing just that. But of course, here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, what's a customary thing that we like to do is we want to take the opportunity, of course, to celebrate you, to love on you, to acknowledge you. So if you would, please tell us if you got anything personally and or professionally that's going on right now or coming up that we need to know about. Please let us know about that so we can celebrate it, lift it up, acknowledge it, know how to support it, follow it, all that good stuff. So what does Martha got coming up that we need to be shouting about and celebrating about? What's going on with you?
I'm gonna say it with a smile. Absolutely nothing. Just living. And I have to be 100% honest because a lot of people they see who you are, they see what you've done in the past, and they're like, oh, she must be in the studio, she must be in. I am not, but this year I've made some goals for myself. I am a workaholic, and that can be a good thing, it can be a bad thing, but it's something that I've gravitated into because of my situations from the past. I have a family I have to take care of, and I do it proudly, but sometimes we can lose ourselves in doing that. So um, I have some things that I am going to be, doing for myself this year. I love to write. I love to write plays. I love to, write stories. Just short stories and things of that sort. Um, I want to get back into the studio. I want to do some things vocally, with some of my old, friends, and just get back and do some things musically. But the most important thing that I am doing this year, I am making time for me. So, but I do have Facebook, I have Instagram, and it's just my first and last name, Martha Buries. You can follow me and just see what some of those happenings will be for this year. But mainly, I am taking care of me. I am focusing on me. I am going to make sure that Martha is good because if Martha's not good, what Martha has underneath her is not good. So, and I'll tell anybody that's out there, that's been in the limelight, that's been on TV shows, that's been on anything, it's easy to get discouraged and it's easy to set it down. And I understand because, I'm that person, and I make, reasons for why, but the main reason is, probably because of what is going on around you. But the biggest thing that you can do for yourself is just do it for yourself. If nobody even hears it, if you never even put it out, just do it for yourself. And that's what I plan on doing this year. And, if you follow me on either one of those social media outlets, then you will be able to see what's going on with me. But mainly, take care of yourself. And that's what I'm going to do as well, taking care of myself.
Well, that is wonderful, and yeah, and as far as I'm concerned, that is definitely worth celebrating. That's definitely worth loving on you about because you've made an intentional decision to love on yourself, to take the time to exercise some self care, to be goal oriented, to to again to make yourself a priority. It's something that my and I've mentioned this before. This is something that my stepfather used to refer to as a healthy selfishness, and that's what you're doing right
Mm,
now. I'm practicing
hmm
some healthy
I like
selfishness.
that.
And
I
every now
love
and
that.
then that means that I'm gonna have to say some no to some folks that I used to be real easy say yes to. Don't take no
Mm-hmm.
offense to it. I'm just practicing some healthy selfishness right now. I'm looking out for
Mm-hmm.
me. I already am a self-proclaimed workaholic. I do plenty. I give I give enough of myself, but I'm this year I'm making an intentional effort to carve out that most important
Mm-hmm.
time for me because you're
Yeah.
recognizing that if I don't fill my cup back up, then how am I going to be able to pour into anything else or anybody else? I won't be.
Absolutely.
I can't operate
Absolutely.
on fear. I'm a human being. I'm not a machine. I'm not a robot. I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking about me, and nothing. There's nothing
Mm-hmm.
wrong with that. So yeah,
Nothing at
we
all.
celebrating that, and and we
Thank
loving
you.
on that, and we lifted that up. That's definitely that's that. Hey, the celebration doesn't always have to be. I got this big new project. I got a new album coming out. No, all
Mm-hmm.
that stuff is cool, but
Mm-hmm.
no.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start with you. What are we doing on the inside? What's work? How are we working on ourselves to be
Mm-hmm.
better? A better version of us. So yeah, we
Absolutely.
celebrating that. We loving on
Absolutely. Yes.
that.
And ladies and gentlemen, get to the doctor, find out what's going on, what's not going on. Take care of yourselves as we are dropping like flies
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason. Take care of yourselves, please, by all means necessary. And when I say it to you, I say it to me. Let's get in this gym. Let's do what we gotta do. Let's take care of ourselves.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, again, thank you so much for taking the time out today
Thank you.
and sharing with us. It's been a wonderful experience. And to my audience, if you've enjoyed our broadcast this evening, you've been inspired, you've been encouraged. Please share, please subscribe, please like, please comment, because this is what the Blessings in the Streets podcast is all about. to encourage, to uplift, to inspire, to be transparent and vulnerable in the sharing of our stories with the hopes of being able to give you some gems, some nuggets that you can tap into to apply to your respective situations as you deal with the adversities of life. Because the reality is adversity is not exclusive to just a few select people. We all go through our challenges. We all go through our storms. But you know what? Keep in mind that in order for that storm to even come down your street, there's a God that has to give it permission to do so. And because he loves us unconditionally, and if he's allowing that to come your way, I can promise you it's either to bless you or it's to equip you to be a blessing to somebody else. It's never to destroy, it's never to minimize or take you out or anything of that nature. He's always looking out for your best interest. And if you don't have a relationship with God, and I'm sure Martha would attest to this, today is a mighty fine day to make that decision. And I promise you it'll be the best decision that you will ever make. We're not telling you something that we heard. We're telling you something that we know firsthand of how he moves in your life, and he wants you to be dependent upon him. He wants that relationship. He wants that bond, that closeness with you. He wants to just be there and pour into you and give you the best that there is to offer you. But most importantly, he wants you to be focused in the purpose that he has designed, the main reason why he even created you to be here, and to live out the true self of who you are and who he wants to see you become with all of the gifts that he's placed inside of you. So don't take that relationship for granted. Don't feel like you got to do life on your own and put on that Superman or that Superwoman cape and carry all the weights and the burdens by yourself. You don't have to. He'll take that off of you, and he'll show you in a mighty and a magnificent and blow your mind kind of way what he can do with what we consider to be insurmountable situations. He'll take that thing and make it look, as easy as can be, and it'll be clear cut that it was all him, that is nothing but his hands on it. You won't be able to call it luck. You won't be able to call it by chance. It just so happened to go that way. No, it was all him because he loves us unconditionally. So with that said, remember here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, this is the place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and your journey is your joy. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, you keep fighting that good fight. You keep embracing who God is, embrace that relationship with him, and just watch him blow your mind and just make miracle after miracle in your life and just use you in a mighty and powerful way. He loves you. He wants nothing but the best for you. Lean on him, trust in him, follow his lead, and he will never steer you wrong. So until then, you take care, and I look forward to seeing you at our next episode. Until then, you have a great rest of your evening. All right.